It is that time of year when Hollywood gets ready to honor the best work in the movies and on television. Nominations for the 53rd Annual Golden Globe Awards were announced today. Unlike the Oscars, there are separate categories for dramas and comedies or musicals. Sense and Sensibility, starring British actress Emma Thompson, topped the dramatic list with 6 nominations. But 2 highly touted films, Oliver Stone's Nixon and Martin Scorsese's Casino, were snubbed in that category. Also making the list were Apollo 13, Braveheart, The Bridges of Madison County, and Leaving Las Vegas. In the running for Best Musical or Comedy are The American President, Babe, Get Shorty, Sabrina, and the animated Toy Story.
We interrupt this program to bring you the following America's Talking special report.
The latest figure is that at least 30 people have lost their lives in this disaster. We believe that at least 17 of them were small children in a daycare center on the 2nd floor when the 9-story building collapsed under the force of an explosion that may have been caused by as much as 1,200 pounds of explosives. No known motive as yet, and the search for survivors continues. Our live interactive coverage will continue right after a break.
It's the Christmas season, and a judge in Arkansas has no feeling for it. Let's take a look. This is a light display in Little Rock, Arkansas, and here's some tape of it. This thing is huge. As you can see, the traffic jam outside.
That's somebody's yard, right?
That's somebody's yard. I don't even want to think about what this electric bill must be. I plugged in my lights a couple weeks ago because I had to get ready for Christmas early and blew all the fuses. So you can imagine what the electric bill must be. But hey, I say this is America. If one of Bill Clinton's old neighbors back in Arkansas wants to light up his house and pay the electric bill himself and have a little fun at Christmas, I say, Judge, have a heart, let him do it. Okay, there goes the Ty-Cam.
Now,
the Ty-Cam spy cam.
Right.
This is a great thing that every reporter should have. A telephone with a lie detector built right in.
Exactly.
Hello, Mr. Gingrich. Did you say you really wanted to work with the president? Okay, it is always a good day when you start your day with Sesame Street. Welcome back to America's Talking. We are here with Bob McGrath and Annette Kalud, 2 of the humans on Sesame Street, which is now entering its 26th year. And we were just talking during the break. Annette has really brought a new dimension to Sesame Street this year because your background includes Broadway, doing Miss Saigon, and you are going to be teaching everybody on Sesame Street how to dance, and we have a clip of this, so let's take a look.
Oh, go, John. Come on, John. Go, John. Go, John. John. John.
There you go. Oh, sorry.
It's really easy.
We're on camera. We're back on.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
How
that
embarrassing.
was too fun. It is Valentine's Day, so let's take a look at some of the romantic stories that are making news coast to coast. The Capitol building may not be your idea of romance, but one senator thought it was the perfect place to say, I do. William Cohen, the Republican from Maine, married his fiancée of 3 years, Janet Langhart. Many couples gathered for a kiss-a-thon in Clearwater, Florida. The event, sponsored by a local radio station, kissed off at 6 this morning. The prize isn't too shabby. The couple that keeps their lips locked for the longest wins a diamond wedding ring set. Maybe that should be an Olympic event. What do you think, John?
And you are looking very Valentine-y in that red. And I bet if we take a wide shot, I can see your Valentine present there on the desk.
That's
Not
right.
from me.
No, from my lovely husband, Bill, and he is up in the San Francisco Bay Area watching the show today, and I just wanted him to know I got the flowers.
Well,
So
they're
here they are.
fabulous flowers. You'll call your husband as soon as the show's over.
And John, I wish you a good Valentine's Day as well, and I promise just for today, no jokes about the weather.
All right, no jokes. I'll see you tomorrow.
It's a deal. See you tomorrow, John. That's In Depth for today. Remember, if it is making headlines, we are talking about it in depth. We want to thank all of the viewers who call in and take part in our national conversation. And now, as we close, we want to leave you with a special Valentine's Day wish from all of us here at In Depth Coast to Coast. Have a happy day. Now let's talk about Steve Forbes. He rocketed to the top of the polls with his flat tax proposal and a negative advertising blitz. He isn't taking campaign matching funds or releasing his tax returns. He doesn't have to. He was born rich. Now Steve Forbes may be changing his campaign strategy after a fourth-place finish in Iowa. Lesson number 1, don't dump on the religious right. Lesson number 2, don't be so negative that voters are turned off. Now that Steve Forbes has established himself as a credible force in presidential politics, voters have a lot of questions about where he stands on the issues. Joining us now from Washington is the co-chairman of the Forbes campaign, former Senator Malcolm Wallop. Welcome to the program, Senator.
Thanks, Terry.
Well, Steve Forbes is apparently doing some fine-tuning of his campaign. He may have some new ads coming out. How is his strategy changing?
This is a campaign where none of the candidates are perfect in the minds of their supporters.
But Walter, this is New Hampshire. I was up there last summer, and it seemed like everybody had shaken hands with most of these guys more than once. How could they be undecided at this point?
Well, they're professional voters. They take the... I mean, it got so bad. I was with Steve Forbes when he went to an elementary school today, and he was with a fourth grader. And the fourth grader first asked a question, a little girl, and asked him point blank, Mr. Forbes, you finished 4th in Iowa. Do you blame that on your negative commercials? And Forbes takes about 4 steps back, is sort of stunned at this sort of direct, sort of TV-like question. So afterwards, I go up and talk to the little girl. I mean, I normally have a W.C. Fields attitude towards children. I don't do kid interviews.
You like them well done? Is that
Yeah,
I believe that was
this one
W.C.
just asked
Fields.
a better question than most of the adult
Exactly.
reporters.
So I sought her out. So I said, what do you really think about Mr. Forbes? And she looked very, very thoughtful and smiled and said, well, I like Mr. Forbes, but I have some serious problems about his flat tax plan. These are fourth graders. You can imagine what the adults are like.
Walter Shapiro is there, and you can ask him questions yourself by calling us at 1-800-988-TALK. We'll be right back to talk more politics after this.
You seem real excited to have you come.
Sustained. Wouldn't you?
That's what made Kato Kaelin one of the most colorful witnesses in the O.J. Simpson trial. But today, for once, he wasn't talking to reporters when he showed up to give a deposition in the wrongful death lawsuit against O.J. Simpson. He can expect to be grilled about the contradictions between what he said on the witness stand and what came out later in a book. He may have information crucial to proving or disproving O.J. Simpson's alibi for the night of the murders. We are talking with attorney Michael Shapiro, who's with John in New Jersey. Superior Court Judge Burton Katz is with me in Burbank, and former federal prosecutor Jim Moorhead joins us from Washington. Let's get into this question of the Mark Elliott tapes, Judge Katz. What are some of the areas where there's a real contradiction with what Kato said during the criminal trial?
I think with respect to the intensity with which O.J. reacted in essence as it related to not being able to see Sidney, the fact that Cora Fishman and Nicole were dressed to kill, they were going to go out and party. Those are certainly two important areas there because it shows the rage and the depth of emotion that O.J. may have been feeling at that time.
Don't you think it's suspicious that O.J. Simpson, who basically treated Kato like an errand boy, all of a sudden on the night of the murders says, hey, Kato, let's go get a burger together in the Bentley? Wasn't it pretty obvious that he was trying to create maybe some kind of alibi here?
That's certainly a good argument, and I have no doubt that that's going to be an argument that will be made. And as I've said, I think that and a lot of other arguments will be successful for the plaintiffs this time around.
Do you think that Kato is going to cough up any new information under these conditions?
What, like a hairball?
That's like a hairball. I think they're going to, like teeth, I think they're going to pull some teeth. And I think they're going to pull some evidence, and he's going to go screaming and he's going kicking, but it's going to happen because you know what? They're going to start hitting him. Remember, we have more tapes than just Mark Elliott. You've got there was a statement that he made at least to Van Etter and Lang. You know that there were interviews prior to the trial and prior to the preliminary hearing with the deputy district attorneys. You know that there was a testimony, sworn testimony under oath at the preliminary hearing. Then you have the trial testimony.
I think Kato can do a better job, excellent, man.
Yeah, but it won't be so excellent for O.J. if he really does know something that could shatter the alibi. And realistically, realistically, Bert, Kato does not know where O.J. was during the crucial time when the murders probably took place.
That's right, and he brings O.J. home well in time to have committed the crimes at 9:40, maybe at the worst 9:45. So I think that's very, very critical, together with his other testimony.
Plus, O.J. is now trying to say he was sleeping, he was in the house, and Kato says
no, he was golfing.
He was up and around.
He was golfing, Terry.
Up next, Fred Goldman, the father of murder victim Ron Goldman, continues his crusade for justice. He is promoting a reform initiative, while O.J. Simpson is promoting a videotape. We will take your calls at 1-800-988-TALK.
My son's blood is in the wrong place, so to speak, and his blood's in the wrong place. He's going to have to explain all of that in a civil trial.
It has to be frustrating for you to be trying to get him to give a deposition under oath in the civil trial. He did not take the stand, as was his right in the criminal trial, and now he's got this money-making venture where he claims to tell his story. What would be your message to the public about this particular product?
Well, I'm certainly not going to suggest to anyone that they do anything unlawful. I certainly wouldn't buy it. I don't expect that I'd see anything other than what I would expect to see. I'm not going to tell anybody to do anything specifically. If people want to buy it, they'll buy it. If they don't, they don't. What's disturbing is that, as far as I'm concerned, this man murdered 2 people, and on the backs of those murderers, he's trying to cash in. It's disgusting.
I have to ask you about that Ross Becker comment. Almost everybody involved with this, Mr. Goldman, is saying that O.J. clearly is lying on this videotape that he is putting out there to the public. Is there anything you can do with this in the civil lawsuit that's coming up? Maybe use it to show he's contradicted himself or something?
Well, without question, we'll be looking at, or my attorneys more accurately will be looking at all facets of the tape, et cetera, and how it relates to what hopefully he ultimately says when he's deposed, and ultimately what he says when he's on the stand in the trial.
For 16 months of doing O.J., I knew this day was coming. The most significant thing for most people out of the Simpson trial will be that initiative, is the, are we going to have a unanimous verdict or not in California?
Well, John, I hope the 800 number Fred Goldman is promoting for that initiative gets way more calls than the one O.J. Simpson is promoting. That's In Depth for today. Remember, if it's making headlines, we are talking about it in depth. Good night, John.
Good night, Terry. Have a good weekend. 2 of the major Republican stories in the last few days have been the surging populism of Pat Buchanan and the flat tax proposals of Steve Forbes.
And if both of those campaign themes sound a little familiar, it could be because they figured prominently in Jerry Brown's 1992 race for president. The former California governor was able to beat Bill Clinton in primary states like Colorado, Vermont, and Connecticut. But that was the race for the Democratic nomination. We're going to talk about why Republican voters now seem attracted to ideas like a fairer tax system and putting American jobs ahead of those big international trade deals. Joining us now from Oakland, California, where he hosts a nationally syndicated radio program, is former California governor and former presidential candidate Jerry Brown. Welcome to the program once again, Governor.
Thank you.
Okay, tell us what's going on here. Steve Forbes took this flat tax and rode it all the way to the top in Arizona. Does this mean he has a great message or just more money to buy TV ads or what?
It means a little of both. What you're seeing now is a disintegration of the status quo. It's not going to be over with tomorrow, but increasingly you see a vulnerability. Buchanan was surging because he was attacking the corporate elite, Wall Street, the New World Order, and that resonates with a lot of people. I was saying much the same thing myself. On the other side, you've got Forbes taking a totally globalist outlook, and in one sense it's totally opposite to Buchanan, but it is similar in that it's anti the status quo, anti-Dole, anti-Lamar Alexander, anti-Brokaw and Jennings and Rather and Cokie Roberts and all the inside pundits. He's an outsider, and he's giving the hope of simplicity, which is a flat tax. That's really a metaphor. It's a symbol that is touching people emotionally. There's some substantive problems with it because it will create such a windfall for the rich. And what it means here is there's great vulnerability on the part of Dole and on the part of those who are viewed as in charge of America politically and economically.
Well, why is it that Pat Buchanan, who, as you said, is saying some of the same things that you said, and yet is way at the other end of the political spectrum? I mean, I'm just surprised to hear you even admit that you and Pat Buchanan are reading from the same page of sheet music.
Well, similar in that he's attacking the New World Order, which is an order of corporate oligarchy, totally at variance with American sovereignty, local community, families, neighborhood, any kind of non-market value which religion and friendship and tradition are at their essence. Now, Buchanan's got some baggage. He is against the right of women to have an abortion. He wants to control that by the state. Secondly, he's made some really wild comments about the Holocaust. Hey, he's linked himself with people on the far right in terms of the Ku Klux Klan and other places, which endears him to a certain right-wing sentiment and constituency. So it's a very mixed bag out there when you look at both Buchanan and Forbes. Neither one of them really have the agenda that can go all the way, but they are tapping into holes and places of great vulnerability in this armor of Dole, of Gingrich, and even of Clinton.
But irony abounds here. Where does Steve Forbes come off being the champion of the little guy? He's one of the richest people in the country.
Because he is not identified as the insider. The fact that he's spending millions, he spent millions in Arizona, and never underestimate the power of those advertising presentations, because they create the reality. When people are thinking in Arizona, who are you going to be for? Every 14 minutes, there's a pretty picture of Forbes, and there's a negative on his opponents. So that gives a tremendous boost in terms of his reality. And I don't think people are analyzing the rest of the Forbes agenda. He hasn't talked about the minimum wage. He hasn't talked about the exported jobs, really. He just says, hey, we'll grow our way out of everything.
David from Coppers Cove, Texas. Go ahead and speak directly to Jerry Brown.
Yes, I would like to ask Governor Brown how he feels personally that many of the Republicans have taken over his idea of the flat tax in one form or another, and his reaction to that.
Well, I'll tell you, in some ways I'm pleased. It's not an original idea. I didn't invent the idea of the flat tax, but it came to me because I realized the tax code, which now, it goes into thousands of pages, is not flat, it's crooked. And people don't like it. It's burdensome. It takes 1 billion hours of labor on the part of people, not to mention the money, to comply. And therefore, it's going to be flattened one way or the other.
Mr. Keyes, we need to take a break right now, but we will continue our conversation with Republican presidential candidate Alan Keyes. He says he's the only true conservative in the race. What do you think? Call us at 1-800-988-TALK. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Keyes.
Hi, I have a question. I live here in Arizona, and this state is mostly for Steve Forbes. And they showed a document where his flat tax would actually take from the middle class. And they were telling me how much I'm making. And it's really weird that I'm a $40,000 a year person, me and my husband together, but yet we have 43% taken out on our taxes. And that seems to be a lot of it with today's wages and the way they are banked, where we're on a salary plus commission. And a lot of people in the high technology area and the upper middle class are really getting taken by
Almeida,
this.
I suspect you want Mr. Keyes to tell you where he stands on the flat tax?
Right. I mean, because I don't see how it adds up that we're going to be taken for more than we already are.
Well, see,
all right, let him
I
answer.
think the flat tax is just a distraction from the real solution. The problem is the income tax itself, which gives the government a preemptive claim to a certain percentage of our income. And since they're the ones who control the percentage, there's no reason why they shouldn't set it at 100%. And then the psychology is that they're allowing us to keep some of the money that we earn. Steve Forbes has used that language about how the flat tax will allow people to keep more of their money. What is he talking about? The government doesn't allow us to keep money. We earn it. It's ours. And the income tax creates this mentality. I think the only way to deal with the situation we're in is to abolish tax serfdom, abolish the income tax.
No
Go to a
income tax
national-
at all.
Go to a national, you don't need the income tax. We didn't have it until 1913. It was forbidden by the original Constitution. And it was an innovation, and it has turned out to be an experiment that doesn't work. Go
Would you
back to the
replace it with
original
anything like
Constitution of
maybe a
American
national
freedom.
sales tax?
National retail sales tax. Bill Archer, who is chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the House, has proposed one. Senator Lugar, Bob Dornan, other people who are prominent in politics and in Congress support it because it is the way to give people and families back control over their money. Why should the government make the first decisions about how our dollars are used when we earn those dollars?
Can you stay with us for one more segment?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back with more after this. Stay with us. Why Americans Hate Politics is the title of a book that was required reading during the 1992 presidential campaign. Now author E.J. Dionne has done it again. His new book is called They Only Look Dead, and it's a provocative theory of how the Democrats could challenge the Republican Revolution. Many American voters are part of the anxious middle class. They don't like big government, but they are also fearful of dismantling the social safety net of government programs like Social Security and Medicare. Could this be the blueprint for Bill Clinton's second term? Well, let's ask the author. Joining us once again in Los Angeles is Washington Post journalist E.J. Dionne. Welcome once again.
Good to be back.
Now, this anxious middle class, what makes you think they'd just as soon go with somebody who's more likely to be a Democrat rather than all of these Republicans who are battling it out now in New Hampshire?
Well, the anxious middle has been all over the lot in the last 5 years because they're angry and they're not satisfied with what they got. In 1992, they were the force behind Ross Perot and helped elect Bill Clinton. But the Democrats failed, essentially, in their view, to improve their living standards and to do anything that they had wanted them to do in the first place. So they turned and said, we're going to throw them out and elect the Republicans. But they were never electing the Republicans to sort of turn the country to the right. They don't much care about left or right. They want some sense of economic security in this new, complicated economy. They don't feel they're getting it right now. And I think those are the issues that are going to dominate politics, not whether we have big or small government.
Well, I was just going to say, is it a choice between big government or no government? And what you're saying is there should be a choice in the middle there called progressive government.
Right, and that I think that people are not against big government nearly so much as they're against bad government, which they sense is government that's not doing much for them. And what I'm arguing for is a re-engagement with what I think is the strongest tradition in our country, which is the progressive tradition going back to Teddy Roosevelt, right through Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman forward.
My question is very simple. Mr. Dion, where in the Constitution does it give the federal government the power to do all these wonderful things so-called progressives want to do for America?
Well, as you know, probably because you asked the question, we have decided, the Supreme Court has decided, that the General Welfare Clause of the Constitution gives Congress significant authority. The Interstate Commerce Clause of the Constitution gives, given how our economy is so interlinked, gives the federal government a lot of authority. I mean, we could argue about this, and you'll probably bring up the 10th Amendment and say that my view is totally wrong. I think we have accepted in America that the government has a right to do such things as provide Social Security and Medicare, and I think we were right.
Explain to me, what is the difference between a progressive and a liberal, and is progressive just a nice way of getting around the dreaded L word?
Well, I like to joke that a progressive is a liberal who's looked at the polls, and I'm trying not to use the word in that sense. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with the word liberal. Indeed, I think sort of liberals should arise and walk and sort of honor their own tradition at this point. But I use the word progressive because, in a sense, liberals were the part of a much larger movement in our history, this movement about using democratic government affirmatively to improve society and to help liberate individuals. And I use this term also because Americans sort of are unhappy with the whole mood we have toward government right now. And a progressive is, in a sense, an optimist and is not a cynic and does not think we should spend another 10 years deriding government, thinking all politicians are crooks and that the whole situation is hopeless. That kind of cynicism is antithetical to the democratic idea with a small d.
All right, I have to thank you, E.J., for being here. It's a great book called They Only Look Dead, Why Progressives Will Dominate the Next Political Era. Please come back.
Thank you so much. I will.
Thank you. John and I will be right back to wrap up the day's news right after a short break. Stay with us.